I mean, I just remember spending a couple of years going, I can't believe I'm sitting here right now, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do Saturday Night Live. How cool is that?
Very cool. I think one of the most fun things I've gotten to do was that.
What was it like?
Very surreal.
Uh-huh.
Because you grow up watching it on television every Saturday, and also I'm a fan of like 30 Rock and those shows where it's all shot, in those hallways at 30 Rockefeller. So being in the hallways, seeing the set, it's so much smaller than you'd think. The crowd even, the audience only holds like 60 people.
Wow.
So it's very small. But yeah, I was just pinching myself the whole
Aren't all the late night shows kind of like that though? I mean, that always struck me.
In New York, yeah. It's all like very tight spaces in those
LA
buildings.
too. I remember doing Leno just the first time walking in there going, this is it? This is Johnny Carson all those years? Was it here?
I know.
It seems so small, but it's just like a award show. You still have that camera over there looking at you, and you know what's on the other side of it.
Yeah, totally. So true. I think the biggest space I've done like for one of those shows was like Ellen, where it's like very roomy backstage. But yeah, all the New York talk shows is very tight quarters. Like Today Show, Good Morning America, it's like a closet.
Yeah. So far of those, has there been one of those hosts that just really made you feel at home and you're like, oh, this is actually kind of fun?
Yeah. Seth Meyers was really cool to us, and we've done Jimmy Fallon twice, and he's just always so warm and inviting, and he signs off on all the artists that play. Like he's the top of the creative chain. So he just is always so excited to see us, and it's very legendary to even be in that room. So he's one of my favorite hosts.
That's cool. Were you nervous about dancing for Ellen?
Yeah. Even just seeing her in person, and she's really good friends with Keith Urban, and I was on tour with him at the time. So we had that to chat about, and she's just like so cool. She was watching our sound check, eating her lunch, and came up and said hi. It was awesome.
What was it like touring with Sam Hunt?
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, I feel like we just got off that tour. We ended here in Nashville, and I just remember that whole tour being, it was his first headline tour at that scale. And so I learned a lot, just him figuring out how to be an arena artist, an amphitheater artist. And
you learned a lot, like what?
I think just how to run a crew and how to run production, and, just having to do the same kind of have the same energy every night. That's also something I learned from Keith. It's just how every night do you keep yourself on your toes and shoot energy into the back of those places each and every night. And
what do you think the secret is to that?
I remember both of those artists are diligent about like working out every day, keeping your stamina up. Just having a good head on your shoulders, remaining close with your fan base. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And if I looked at like a video of myself on the first night of the Keith tour, like me opening, and then me on the Sam tour, I grew so much learning from both of those guys that I have more fun now on stage because I trust the audience more.
Good,
and,
that makes sense.
Because you're scared at first, and then you break that wall down, and you're like, we're all in this together.
There you go.
It's summertime, like we're all playing music, we're enjoying it. So now I enjoy myself more on stage now.
Those are good stage karmas.
Yeah.
You're going out with Niall Horan, is that right? Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, and from One Direction. And are you rethinking I guess I should ask first, are you a fan of his?
I am. I honestly, like, I've always grown up listening to everything. So One Direction, even though I think the fan base is younger than me for that band, I remember hearing like Steal My Girl, and I was like, gosh, this is such a great pop song. And then when they sort of all started doing their own solo projects, I noticed like Niall was always the one with the guitar. And just like I loved his first single that he put out, and found out that he was a songwriter and he wrote a lot of those songs for the band. And I, of course, like being a Nashville songwriter, was attuned to that. And I think, once he reached out to me to be on that song, Seeing Blind, I listened to it and it had this almost country feel to it. It was very like stompy, rootsy. So it just felt like a great fit. And then having toured in Ireland this past November, they're very similar to country fans.
Yep.
Like that Irish traditional,
They like
rootsy,
real stuff. I can see where they would like you.
They like real instruments.
They like writers. They like people who
Yeah.
will play their guitar and sing their song.
Yeah.
And that kind of.
So I think it's going to be a really fun tour, and we're going.
He seems like a cool guy, and I actually
Yeah.
went when I heard you guys were going to do that. I actually went and just started listening to some of his stuff that was just YouTube-ish and whatever to get a real feel for him. Like,
Yeah.
I like him, I mean,
Thanks.
he seems to embrace an audience in a pretty real way.
Yeah, we debuted the song at the CMAs, and he had never been to a country
Really?
awards show, and I was like, seeing him exchange numbers with Luke Bryan, I was like, what do you think of all this? And he was like, he's like, I've never been to an awards show where everyone is actually friends with each other. And I think that
Nobody's
threw him-
showing their teeth here,
Right. He's like, you guys are like rooting each other on, and you're not like pissed if you lose. Like it's your friends winning. So it's really cool to be in a place
That's
like that.
good.
He had a great time.
Tell me about the song, the hate song you did with Vince, and I guess you did it, and Vince sang on it, but
Yeah.
wasn't it? It's kind of a duet, but what a great record that was. And
Thank you.
when I heard you done that, I'm like, okay. And you always appreciate the thought behind it, but a lot of times those songs are not as good as the intentions. That was a really good song.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, how'd that come about?
It was actually written, like I wrote it with Tom Douglas, who is a Hall of Fame songwriter.
Good
And,
buddy of mine, the Louisiana Cat.
Oh yeah, and just a pure poet.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it with him and David Hodges, and it was the South Carolina shootings 3 or 4 years ago now, and I think we all three like kind of wanted to cancel. Like after something that tragic, it's like, how do you go and write a song? And so, but we all showed up, and Tom had this title, Dear Hate. And I was like, that's interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
he had like a lot of the lines kind of already jotted down, just like streamlining, what comes to mind when you think of the concept of hate, like everything from the hatred that happens out in the world to self-hatred. Like there's so many scopes of it. So it just flowed out of us. It was such an emotional therapy session. And I just remember singing some melodies, and we incorporated a lot of like historical aspects to the song, talking about like JFK and 9/11. It's like, how do you touch on all of these things in a poetic way without, it can so easily go earnest and like cheesy. And that's not the point. So we wanted to keep it really respectful and, not so linear. And we kind of knew when the song was finished that day that it was a really powerful song, and it was just so cathartic to write it. And then, but the problem, not really a problem, but the issue with the song like that is it's so specific. You can't just slap that on a record sight unseen. Like you really have to be methodical because it's just so delicate. And I didn't feel like it fit on my album because it was, it's such a specific subject that it's about. And but I remember always wanting to release it at some point, whether it was like album 2 or some other thing. And I remember recording it just for safety. And I sent it to Vince because I met him at All for the Hall because I did that 2 years ago. And he was so sweet to me. And he and Keith, host that every year. And I was like, can I get your email? And he was like, of course, sweetie. And I sent him the song, and he was like, anytime you want to do this, I would love to be a part of it. And so we went into the studio like a month or two later. He was just originally supposed to play guitar on it. And then he was like, do you mind if I take this home? And I was like, no, please. You're Vince Gill. And like a month later, you know, I was touring and not had forgotten about it, but it was sort of pushed to the back of my brain. And he sent it over and he was like, I hope you don't mind, but I felt so passionately like singing and playing on it that I decided to just take the second verse, and you keep it or leave it, like whatever you like. And I listened to it, and you know, he's got one of the best voices in the world, best tenor voices. Sure. And he sang the second verse, and I was like, well, that's it. And the recording was just perfect. It was just about the timing of releasing it, and we had no plan for it. And it was like waiting in the wings for something. And I remember playing the Route 91 festival in Vegas the night before the shooting, and I just felt so safe there. And it was one of the most fun festivals I got to do all year because it was on the Strip. It was so beautiful at night to like look out. I'd never played on the Strip before. And to be at a country festival looking at all those lights was so beautiful. And the backstage area, like Brian O'Connell set it up so well for the artists to like hang out and watch each other play, that it was just the last place you could ever think something that horrific would happen. And I was in Nashville, and I woke up that Monday morning and heard about what had happened and was so devastated and very shaken because I had just been there. I just gotten home. And
what goes through your head when you get news like that after a situation like that where you were just having so much fun?
I think obviously shock and terror, because I remember having to go immediately that day into rehearsals for my theater tour that was starting like that next week. And I just, as an artist, it's like you can't help but feel like scared to go back on stage, and very vulnerable. Yeah. And as fans, I'm sure as well, scared to go to shows. So it really shook me up, and it shook everyone up. And I remember thinking, like, there have been so many back-to-back, like, horrible things that would happen, and I would always go back and listen to the recording of Dear Hate just for myself to, like, remember those words. And it just kind of, like, occurred to me. I was like, what am I waiting for? Like, the perfect marketing strategy to put a song out? Like, it's just...
Not for that one.
No. And I was like, I don't want anything from this song except for people to hear it. So what can I do? I want to give the proceeds that I make off the downloads to victims of the Vegas shooting and their families. And I just want people to hear it because I feel like it will maybe, on some chance, emotionally heal somebody, one person. And I put it on YouTube. At first, I just wanted to be like, hey, this isn't for sale, but this is just for anyone who needs to listen to it. And then it got 1 million views in the first day. And then I think all of us were like, okay. And everyone was asking, like, I want to own this. Like, I want to have it in my library. And so I was like, well, I feel I don't want to be, like, disrespectful. Like, I'm not trying to capitalize off of anything. I just want people to be able to hear it. And so that's how we came up with the charity to go to the victims and their families. And, you know, it just became this moment in time, and it wasn't planned. But I've had so many people through social media, and also I did a West Coast, like a quick West Coast run this past month, and I had so many people that were survivors come up and say, this is the first show I've gone to since then. And I listened to your song, and it gave me courage. And that's one of the, like, most rewarding moments, I think, of my career so far, is just, you know, kind of stepping up to bat for something that is, and doing it quickly. I think people needed to hear something or like just one artist. And then it was like this influx of the country music community coming together, going to the hospitals, going to Vegas, giving back. And the CMAs being, you know, a month later doing that tribute that Carrie did. I mean, it was just, you know, it was a really beautiful thing to come out of a horrible situation.
I think everybody did the best they could, and like you say, it's just a shame you needed it, but it was great that you had it. Yeah, cool thing. And that's, you know, we're all part of the same management company. It's all my publicity folks, and Brian O'Connell was on the road with Ronnie and I for 7 years. You know, the whole thing sucked, but we all know that. And I'm glad you had such a great song because it was really cool.
Thank you.
All right, before you leave, I got to ask you about Grammy Camp when you were 14 years old. What is that?
Oh, man. Oh, my gosh. That was... So I was going into my freshman year of high school, I think, and I heard about this thing that the Grammy Foundation was doing. It was going to be their first year of what was called Grammy Camp, which is a week-long workshop for high school students who are interested in the music industry, whether that, and there's different, you know, sections of it. Like there are kids that want to do music business. There are kids that want to do, that are interested in recording and producing, kids that are like me that want to be songwriters. And so I got a grant from a project called the Texas Music Project in Texas, and they paid for me to go. And it was my first time flying on an airplane by myself.
Wow.
To LA. And for a week, I was in a songwriting workshop, and I got to meet, you know, Jimmy Jam and like David Foster and do all these seminars. And we basically wrote a song. The engineering students got to record the song, and we got to do a big like performance at the very end. But I met Neil Portnow at the Grammys over 10 years ago. And so that's how I met him. And then I remember when I won last year for country solo performance, I was having that major flashback. I was like, oh my God. And I'm the first, I was in the first year of Grammy Camp, and it's now called Grammy U. But I think I was the first Grammy camper to win a Grammy.
Were you writing decent songs when you were 14?
Probably not. Were you?
No, absolutely
Nothing
not.
To see the light of the day.
I wasn't writing decent songs in college, you know.
I still write crappy ones every once in a while. Yeah. No, probably. I mean, probably better than I would have thought. I think if I listened to it now, I'd be pleasantly surprised. But I can't imagine it was very, very deep.
You ever go find those ideas and go, "Ooh, that was a good idea, but I didn't know what I was doing." And
yeah, it must have been living vicariously through someone else's experience back then. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks for coming in.
It's good to talk to you.
I know. Good to see you, too.
I'll see you at the Derby next year.
Good stuff.
Yeah.